So I've got a lot of different interests. You can probably realize that by scrolling through the different videos I've made so far on this channel. They are at most tangentially related. Although YouTube is the perfect outlet for this, it's been a bit of an issue in my actual life. In life, people are pushed to figure out that one thing they're going to devote their lives to, that one thing that you're going to be. A narrative that will grow louder as you grow older. Upon exiting high school and later exiting college, it will seem like it's being screamed at you near 24/7. I've also spent an insane amount of my free time jealous over people who have been doing one thing well for most of their lives. Newer research holds a lot of hope for those of us who couldn't make up our minds. One of the most often cited cases of specialization is the Polgar sisters. The three Polgar sisters show up constantly in psychology textbooks, and for good reason. Judith Polgar has an IQ of 170. She was also the highest ranked female chess player in history. However, psychology textbooks have a way of focusing on their father. This man, Laszlo Polgar. In the 1960s, he theorized that genius was created instead of born. This went directly against common wisdom at the time that said in order to be a genius, you needed to be from a lineage of other geniuses. Also against common wisdom of the time, in order to prove his theory, he went approaching women telling them that he wanted to start a family in order to experiment with creating a genius. What a guy. Upon finding a wife, they would go on to have 3 children known as the Polgar sisters. He and his wife Clara would homeschool their children so that they could focus more on learning the game of chess, the way that he would measure genius, because it was ranked and structured. And you could say that this experiment was rather successful, as all 3 of them went on to become world-class chess players. All of them are incredibly talented, intelligent people at the tops of their field. I tell this story to illustrate where specialization works the best. Kind learning environment. Kind doesn't mean that they're nice places to be. I've been at a chess tournament and they are grueling. Chess has a predictable set of rules, and although you don't know what your opponent is going to do, you do know what your opponent could do. Most learning environments and most of the world are not as kind as chess. Instead, they're what's known as wicked environments. In a wicked environment, there are no strict rules and there's tons of information to uncover. My favorite comparison of kind versus wicked environments is business and nutrition. Health and nutrition, assuming you don't have a chronic illness, is rather straightforward, despite what a lot of people in diet brands would have you believe. You can know for certain that going to the gym instead of sitting on the couch will make you a tiny bit healthier. The same can be said for eating vegetables and unprocessed protein as opposed to eating McDonald's. Whereas in business, decisions are a lot murkier. What might seem like a good idea today can be obsolete tomorrow. Like when Decca Records decided to reject the Beatles because they thought their music was out of style. Even if they were right by current trends, there was no way to predict what the music industry was going to do in the future. Whether or not they knew that is debatable. People who are narrowly specialized in more wicked environments are blindsided more often than people who are more generalized. It's like the difference between artificial learning and human learning. AIs can learn a narrow set of things incredibly well. AIs are great at learning specific, oftentimes binary tasks, such as when to move or when not to move a chess piece. But this does nothing to teach the AI anything about any other skill. If you were to teach the same thing to a human being, they wouldn't just learn chess, they would also learn how games work. This is what's known as transferability. A person who knows how to play chess can, all things being equal, expect to play other board games a little bit better than people who didn't know anything about them. It's one of the reasons why late bloomers tend to do so well. In 2010, human development professor Alfred Malamud set out to find when specialization in education was the best. To do this, he compared the post-grad outcomes of students in the English and Scottish school systems, which were very similar. The difference being that in England, students were encouraged to specialize in their mid-teens, whereas in Scotland, you could continue trying new things the whole way through, assuming you wanted to. When they graduated, as expected, the English students on average had higher incomes. However, following them through life, in about 6 years, the Scottish students overtook them. They were also happier in their jobs, whereas English students were more likely to be changing fields at this point. It's a lot like the end of history illusion that we spoke about in this video. Basically, people can't tell that their future self is going to want things that are different from their current self. In part because of this, experimentation between domains ends up being one of the most productive things that you can do. Most innovation happens in between domains. To best illustrate this, we should think of death rays, which is exactly what the British Air Ministry was thinking about in 1935 as the Nazis were overtaking them technologically. The British Air Ministry would find a man named Robert Watt, at the time working at the radio research station. He then began asking a lot of strange questions. One particularly stands out that he asked his colleague Skip Wilson. Suppose you have 8 pints of water at 98 degrees Fahrenheit, and you want to heat that water to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. What radio frequency would you need to do it? 8 pints is roughly how much blood is within the human body. Watt was attempting to fry his enemies. Unfortunately, you cannot use radio waves to cook a person. It just takes too much energy. Although they eventually gave up on their death ray, Wilkins would begin to wonder if there was a way to shoot the radio waves at an object and then measure for the time it took for it to bounce back. And there was. They would call it the resonant cavity magnetron, better known as radar. And although they didn't invent this technology, they were the first to make it powerful enough to be used in the war. It was instrumental in turning the tides of World War II in favor of the Allies. Today, radar is used by planes to make sure that they don't crash into each other, by autonomous vehicles for the same reason, and to help us tell the weather. Primarily because the British military recruited a bunch of radio technicians to create a death ray. At age 33, a man named Gaius Julius Caesar approached the statue of Alexander the Great in Spain. Reportedly, he fell to his knees crying, because at his age, Alexander had conquered the world, and in his own words, he had done nothing. The pronunciation of this man's name would change throughout the years. In fact, I have no way of knowing for sure if the way I've said it is exactly as they would have said it. But today we call him Julius Caesar. His assessment of his life was likely so bad in front of Alexander's statue because the assessment was premature. It's hard to know what a story says before the story is actually over. And thanks for watching. Hi, if you really like this video, you should like this video and share it. And if you have a Discord, you should join my Discord. And if you want further reading on the topics discussed in this video, I highly recommend the book Range by David Epstein and Late Bloomers by Rich Cargald. Until next time, thanks for watching.